When we think of kings and queens, we imagine power, wealth, glittering crowns, and luxurious palaces. But not every monarch became famous for ruling well. Some made history for utterly unusual reasons: strange paranoias, absurd decisions, dangerous passions, and even delusions of grandeur. Today, you'll meet 10 kings and queens who defied common sense, shocked their people, and secured a place in the history books for the most bizarre reasons possible. Have you ever heard of a king who thought he was made of glass? That was Charles VI of France, who ruled from 1380 to 1422 and went down in history not for victories, but for mental breakdowns. At first, he seemed promising, young, charismatic, popular, but everything changed when, at 24, he had a sudden outburst during a military campaign. He attacked his own knights and nearly killed his allies. From then on, his mental health only worsened. Charles VI suffered delusions, forgot who he was, and, in one of his most famous paranoias, came to believe that his body was made of glass. So he forbade anyone to touch him, wore reinforced clothing, and avoided moving too much for fear of breaking. For long stretches, he didn't recognize his own wife and children, spoke to ghosts, and walked the palace corridors in absolute silence. The kingdom drifted, and the chaos helped spark the civil war between the Armagnacs and Burgundians and the war against England, which would bring figures like Joan of Arc years later. Charles VI passed into history as the Mad King or the Glass King, a symbol of a time when not even the crown protected against human fragility. Imagine a queen who refused to marry, abandoned the throne, and caused scandal wherever she went. That was Christina of Sweden, who ruled from 1632 to 1654, one of the most eccentric figures in European history. Raised like a prince, Christina was intelligent, multilingual, and passionate about philosophy, art, and science. But she hated the expectations of the throne. She refused to wear dresses, adopted masculine clothing, and even said she would rather die than marry. Christina never married, never had children, and even avoided being touched. For the courtiers of the time, this was a real scandal. But the high point came in 1654. She simply abdicated, left everything behind, and moved to Rome, converting to Catholicism in secret, something forbidden in Protestant Sweden. There she became a celebrity, became a fixture at the Vatican, mingled with artists and intellectuals, and kept defying norms, living as she pleased. Christina of Sweden made history as a queen who broke every rule and liked it. Have you ever heard of an emperor who lost the throne, his nose, and still returned to power? That was Justinian II, Byzantine emperor from 685 to 695, and then, incredibly, from 705 to 711. During his first reign, Justinian became notorious for being authoritarian, unpopular, and brutal. The result? He was deposed in a revolt and, as punishment, had his nose cut off, a Byzantine tradition to ensure he could never rule again. He fled to the Caucasus, allied with the Bulgars, and returned with an army 10 years later, retaking Constantinople by force. After reassuming power, he had a gold prosthesis forged to hide the mutilation and became known as Rhinomatos, the Noseless. His second reign was even more vengeful. Justinian hunted his enemies, carried out mass executions, and ruled more tyrannically than ever, until he was deposed again, and this time for good. Justinian II entered history as the emperor who refused to lose, not even his own face. Imagine a Russian emperor who idolized Russia's greatest enemy. That was Peter III, who ruled for just 6 months in 1762, but left a trail of confusion, gaffes, and bizarre decisions. Educated in Germany and fanatical about Frederick the Great of Prussia, Peter was so obsessed with the Prussian king that, as soon as he ascended the Russian throne, he made peace with Prussia, returned territories conquered by Russia, and began wearing a Prussian uniform at court. Yes, he ruled Russia as if he were a Prussian. Peter was also known for childish behavior. He loved playing with toy soldiers, staged military parades in the palace, and they say, treated his wife, Catherine, as a mere extra, But Catherine was anything but irrelevant. She quickly organized a coup d'etat, seized power with the support of the Imperial Guard, and Peter was imprisoned and mysteriously assassinated soon after. Peter III went down in history as the Tsar who ruled against his own country and ended up paving the way for Catherine the Great. Ever thought of declaring yourself Emperor of the United States? And everyone kind of went along with it. That was Joshua Norton, a San Francisco resident who, in 1859, proclaimed himself Norton I, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico. No army, no palace, no actual power, but with a splendid uniform, official letters, and decrees published in local newspapers. And the most incredible part, the city played along, or rather, showed him respect. Restaurants served him for free. He had a reserved seat in theaters, and he even ordered Congress closed for corruption, at least on paper. Norton also foresaw the future. He proposed a bridge between San Francisco and Oakland, which decades later became reality with the Bay Bridge. He walked the streets inspecting public works, checking sidewalks, and signing documents as if he truly were the emperor of an alternative nation. When he died in 1880, more than 10,000 people attended his funeral. Without ever having political power, he earned the rarest power of all, popular affection. Emperor Norton I entered history as the king of the collective imagination, and perhaps the only monarch who never needed a throne. She was beautiful, charismatic, adored by the people, but behind the fairy tale image hid a morbid obsession with beauty and youth. We're talking about Elisabeth of Bavaria, Empress of Austria, and Queen of Hungary, better known as Sisi. Married at 15 to Emperor Franz Joseph I, Sisi hated the protocols of the Viennese court. Rebellious and melancholic, she withdrew from the palace whenever she could. But what truly marked her life was aesthetic paranoia. Her waist measured just 50 centimeters, maintained through extreme diets, fasts, and incredibly tight corsets. Her hair, which reached her feet, took 3 hours a day to comb, and she would stand for hours, motionless, during the process. Sisi also avoided being photographed or painted after age 30. She wanted the world to remember her young and perfect. Behind the beauty, however, was pain. She lost a child, had an unhappy marriage, and suffered from depression and constant paranoia. In the end, she was assassinated by an anarchist in 1898, an arbitrary act against a woman who spent her life trying to disappear behind an idealized image. Sisi entered history as the queen who turned beauty into a prison. He was a king, but preferred to live like an opera character. That was Ludwig II of Bavaria, who ruled from 1864 to 1886 and became known as the king of fairy tale castles, and of eccentricity as well. Introverted, dreamy, and obsessed with art, Ludwig detested politics. He preferred to spend time reading poetry, admiring the moon, and above all, building castles, and not ordinary castles. He designed palaces inspired by Germanic mythology, medieval legends, and the operas of Wagner, his favorite composer. The most famous? Neuschwanstein, the castle that inspired Disney's Cinderella Castle. Yes, Disney's castle came from a king who never truly wanted to rule. But there was a problem. Ludwig spent personal and public fortunes on his architectural fantasies. He racked up millions in debts and didn't stop building. Accused of insanity, he was deposed by his own ministers in 1886. A few days later, he was found dead in a lake under circumstances that remain mysterious to this day. Ludwig II entered history as the king who preferred to live in a dream until reality swallowed him. Think you've seen cruel kings and queens? Then meet Ranavalona I, Queen of Madagascar from 1828 to 1861, often called the most dangerous monarch in history. When she took the throne, she broke ties with Europe, expelled Christian missionaries, and banned any Western influence on the island. Ranavalona imposed a regime of brutal punishments, forced labor, and a justice based on an ordeal by poison. The accused had to drink a toxic potion. If they survived, they were innocent. In truth, almost no one survived. It's estimated that up to 1/3 of Madagascar's population died during her reign, from executions, famine, internal slavery, or religious persecution. Even so, she resisted external pressure and maintained the island's independence for more than 30 years during the height of European colonization in Africa. For some, a bloodthirsty tyrant. For others, a fierce leader who protected Malagasy's sovereignty at any cost. Ranavalona I made history as the queen who ruled with an iron fist and a heart of stone. Would you dare take poison every day? Mithridates VI, king of Pontus in the 1st century BCE, not only did that, he became a legend for it. King since age 14, he believed everyone wanted to kill him by poisoning, and maybe they really were. Paranoid to the extreme, he began testing poisons on prisoners, servants, and even relatives to study their effects. He devised a cocktail of toxins that he ingested in daily microdoses. The result? He developed such an absurd resistance that he became synonymous with immunity. To this day, the term Mithridatism is used to describe this kind of tolerance to poison. Mithridates faced Rome's might in 3 consecutive wars, challenging figures like Lucius Sulla and Pompey, building an empire in Asia Minor that came to alarm the Roman Republic. At the end of his life, when everything went wrong, he tried to kill himself with poison, but it didn't work, and he had to ask a guard to kill him with a sword. Mithridates VI entered history as the king who defied Rome, mastered poisons, and was killed the old-fashioned way. When it comes to powerful kings, it's hard not to think of Henry VIII, the man who took till death do us part a bit too far. King of England from 1509 to 1547, Henry became famous for one thing: marriages and divorces. Lots of them. He had 6 wives in total, and their fates were as tragic as they were varied. 2 were executed. The marriages to 2 others were annulled. 1 died in childbirth, and only 1 outlived him. The turning point came with the scandal of the century. When the Pope denied Henry's divorce from Catherine of Aragon, he simply created his own church. Thus was born the Church of England, with the king as supreme head, all so he could marry Anne Boleyn, who later was also executed. Beyond the chaotic love life, Henry VIII confiscated church properties, executed opponents, and strengthened English absolutism. Henry went down in history as the king who broke with Rome, broke with his wives, and nearly broke with any sense of limits.